Hello, everyone. My name is Haylie, and I'm one of the founders of the Visionary Leaders Collective. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our community call and our podcast, where we honor the gifts of the earth and we dive deep into wellness solutions using essential oils and other medicinal plants. If you would like to learn more about all of our community offerings, please visit www.hellovisionary.life. Please follow us on Instagram and YouTube. In addition, we would be so grateful if you would take the time to give us a 5-star review on our podcast, because we are new and we are loving your reviews. We have incredible topics each week, so please be sure to tune in weekly and share this with your friends. Today, we will be hearing from adventure athletes Haylie Jones and Wan. They will be sharing their personal tips and protocols for post-workout recovery. Wan is a licensed acupuncturist and has a clinical practice that specializes in performance recovery for elite athletes. Will is also an endurance athlete and an ultra runner himself and brings his expertise to this conversation. Haylie Jones is currently working on her level 2 CrossFit certification. She specializes in injury prevention, maximizing performance, and how to adequately support the body and promote recovery. As always, we'll be opening the call to our community for questions, as we love hearing testimonials and personal tips from the field. If you are new to essential oils and doTERRA, please know by the end of this call, you will know the 3 cool things about essential oils, the 3 ways to use essential oils, why doTERRA is set apart from all of the rest, and how to get these beautiful oils into your home at the best price. So with that, I am going to hand the floor over to Wan. Thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
All right, thank you, Aisha and Visionary Leader Group. I just wanted to really briefly talk about why do you want to consider looking at not only recovery, but also what happens in your whatever event that you really are finding affinity for in terms of your training, workouts, to races, etc. So number one is recovery is really important because ultimately you want to, one, maintain your health. Ultimately, physically, there's more tendency for a lot more muscle pulls, more injury risk when your muscles start to fatigue and your whole overall body starts to fatigue. So we want to look at recovery as almost as important as your actual training or even your event that you're looking at. For myself and for many of my patients who are ultra runners, since it's a sort of a different category to marathon running, there's a different sort of look at with recovery because it has to be built in to a sort of training regimen. And so ultimately, when we look at recovery, there's several things. The most important thing to take from this kind of topic of recovery is blood movement and prevention of blood stagnation. And so blood stagnation in either, whether it be from Chinese medicine, which is my lens and background, to more of even a Western physiology type of approach. When you have blood stagnation or blood movement, there's just the blood is more thick ultimately. And why does that happen? Ultimately from several things. One is inflammation. When a lot more of your body starts to move and you continuously move for even into hours, into sometimes 30 hours, then you're going to ultimately create inflammation that starts to create a lot of oxidative stress, a lot of inflammation. And that inflammation then starts to kind of create less movement within your blood vessels. So number one is always think about blood movement and prevention of blood stagnation. The number two thing is looking at recovery is how to overall bring your body back into this whole space, homeostasis space, where we're looking at this place of rebalancing the hormones. Cortisol being a stress hormone, it gets really way up-regulated during activity to other hormones, testosterone, et cetera, that are ultimately all activated when you start weightlifting to creating, again, more movement in your body. And so ultimately you have to look at bringing the body's natural system of balance, which is called the endocannabinoid system, back into really that regulation place where it brings the body to affecting the neurological system, the endocrine system, the hormones, to tissue repair, blood pressure, heart rate, etc. So number two, think about homeostasis and what can really tap into really, again, bringing the endocannabinoid system back into play. Number three is because, again, where I treat and work with people who do triathlons, ultramarathons, there's a tendency for burnout. And so for recovery is almost just as important, again, as the actual training, because it keeps you motivated, ultimately because you're taking some time off from one specific or two or three specific types of activities. But you're also allowing your mind to just do some other things besides that particular activity. And so that kind of goes into my own, again, protocol of utilizing active recovery, which is ultimately low impact movements that can be from walking, yoga, tai chi, swimming. For a lot of ultra runners, I know this doesn't make sense. Jogging can be actually active recovery, but it's just at, like, again, you're at 30 to 60% of your maximum heart rate. And if you don't know maximum heart rate, it's basically 220, the number, minus your age. And that's roughly about your maximum heart rate that you never want to necessarily exceed. There's specific reasons why you would, in terms of training for sprinting or for quick muscle, fast twitch muscle movements. But ultimately, how you can look at active recovery, again, is keeping your body moving, especially when you get sore, when you get the sort of delayed onset muscle soreness after 24 to 48 hours. It's really key to just gently start moving your body, and that's through this active recovery, because it does help bring more circulation without, again, amping up your nervous system or amping up your neurological or endocrine system. So key important things with active recovery is it can look different for each person in terms of movement. It can be dance, gentle dance. It can be ecstatic dance, but again, more of a low key, low impact type of movement. So that will allow your body to recover just through creating more blood movement to help move a lot of the lactate or even the inflammation going on in the body, so it doesn't stick around in the muscles or in the joints. So number one, in terms of actual kind of protocols, and Aisha, if you can put up that meme, that would be great, is this Maxim Symphony of the Cells protocol. I don't know if everyone's heard of it, but it's Boyd Truman's little booklet. And this particular blend for me has been a lifesaver, literally. I mean, when I came back from doing 100K ultra, and then several months later, for my own personal story, had developed Legionnaire's disease from basically being exposed to some gnarly bacteria. Maximum was an essential part of recovery. because it just works so well with the immune system, the endocrine system, the digestive system, and the cardiovascular system to, again, really break sort of the, how should I say, the sort of stimulated sympathetic, the fight or flight response when you're in sort of fending for your life, ultimately, from a bacterial infection, that this combination of Maxim really, one, helps to be antimicrobial, but also continues to work on the sort of effects of increased inflammation in the body, ultimately, and having to deal with all this excess carnage from the bacteria, and that sort of processing it out of the body. The Maximum protocol is key. For those who don't know it, it's frankincense, rosemary, or thyme. I also like to substitute copaiba in for rosemary or thyme, because again, copaiba works more directly with the endocannabinoid system. The third ingredient is clove, lemongrass, lemon, geranium. Hawaiian sandalwood is my preferred sandalwood, turmeric, and peppermint. The second protocol, I actually like to combine the two. Sometimes Maximum I use in the morning, and then osteo at nighttime. And I just apply them neat, which means without any dilution, directly to the bottom of my feet. And there's been many questions about why bottom of the feet, why on your feet? It's, there can be any places on the body, but typically for the feet, there's less sort of sensitivity to the oils, especially when you're adding in clove and lemongrass and several other the sort of hotter oils. And so there's, again, thicker tissue, thicker epidermal tissue, skin at the feet. And so tends to get less reaction to the oils. But then I use Osteo Blend, which is, again, a combination of frankincense, rosemary, Aroma Touch Blend, lemongrass, grapefruit, lemon, helichrysum, Siberian fir, and peppermint. And osteo, of course, is great for the musculoskeletal system, for inflammation, for the immune system, cardiovascular, digestive, and the urinary system. But I find that especially for if you're on your feet a lot, and this doesn't even have to pertain to activity, it can be for if you're on the floor, like a concrete floor, for long periods of time at work, those working in retail to working on, at the hospital floor. Osteo protocol is really, 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 I can't say how great it is in terms of the importance of, again, working with not only the bones, but the actual musculoskeletal system there, and applying it to the feet is one of my favorite things. In terms of actual localized joint or muscle aches, the trifecta, which Dr. Josie, my wife Mika, Dr. Mika, and myself have talked numerous times about it, and I'm drinking it now in my water bottle, is frankincense, copaiba, and Siberian fir. It has always been for my use in my kind of toolkit, because it's so important for helping to move the blood, helping to support blood movement, and in many ways the whole cardiovascular and pulmonary, the lungs, keeping that all healthy and supported. But what I have found really helpful is adding also Roman chamomile. And this is all neat, or you can actually, if you do find yourself getting sensitive, you can dilute it in fractionated coconut oil, or even I have used castor oil. And for me, castor oil is a great way to warm up the muscles. It's a little bit warming. but also it helps to, again, work the muscles in a way to help increase blood movement and blood circulation. So I add the trifecta Roman chamomile, followed by the deep blue stick and the deep blue rub, and just layering it one right after the other, and then adding finally the deep blue stick, the copaiba, deep blue copaiba stick, and the deep blue rub on top of that. In terms of internal use, the turmeric dual capsule, chambered capsule is also a great way to support not only inflammation, but ultimately helping to support the liver to detoxify any kind of excess inflammatory chemicals, compounds. It also has an affinity for the nervous system and the brain. So helping again to support our bodies in a way when we're increasing inflammation in the body. And that's one capsule twice a day. So one in the morning and then one in the afternoon. The second internal kind of part of this protocol is the deep blue polyphenol complex, 2 capsules twice a day. And again, this is all sort of based on, in terms of the dosing, on several things. One is oftentimes how much activity are you getting in that particular workout? And then also how to train your body ultimately by gently exposing your body to these. If you're not, again, haven't become familiar with turmeric, or you have not taken a lot of essential oils topically or internally, then maybe dialing it back in terms of dosing, I would recommend. But then you've got the Lifelong Vitality Pack, which is doTERRA's phenomenal triple 1, 2, 3 punch, I call it, because it ultimately starts to work on not only your inflammation with the alpha CRS, but it's also great for providing, again, those basic nutrients in its most absorbable form. And then along with the essential fatty acids, which I'll talk more about later, the next part with the fish oil. The next component is the bone nutrient complex. And I found it to be actually very supportive of supporting the bone matrix. One, because there's these micronutrients that are not often found in the Lifelong Vitality Pack or any multivitamin. And that really is important when you're looking at sort of bone resorption. Resorption meaning calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, and all those other small micronutrients, and how they need to kind of be in the body to be able to utilize as sort of rematrixing or remaking bone. And bone is, again, very important in the recovery, because whether you're doing weight-bearing exercises with lifting to running, swimming, not so much necessarily because you're in the water, but any kind of terrestrial activity, you're basically stressing the bones and the muscles as a part of your activity. So helping the sort of natural dynamic bone process of building and breaking down. Bones are dynamic tissue. They break down, they rebuild, they break down, they rebuild. So having those important nutrients within the body to help support that rematrixing of the bone matter is again super important. And then extra fish oil that I find helpful for my body structure, body type, is key, because essential fatty acids, especially omega-3 fats, which are found in the skin of cold water fish, as well as to the seeds that are in the EO omega, are also key components of the essential fatty acid component. because they help with brain, they help with heart health and cardiovascular health. They support ultimately a non-inflammatory pathway, meaning if you're taking in things or doing things like rigorous activities, it's generating more inflammation, right? So when you start supporting the body through non-inflammatory pathways, it's going to shift the body away from inflammation, again, to support those structures like the blood vessels, again, like the heart, to be more healthier ultimately. So that is what I have for you guys today for recovery.
Thank you, Will. This is Dr. Josie Schmidt here, and I just wanted to comment on this whole conversation, and this is why we wanted to have both of you guys on the podcast today, because it's just so important for people to realize that when they're being super athletic, right, and they're taking care of, they're exercising, taking care of themselves, I think a lot of people think that it's like, hey, I'm good. I don't need supplements. I don't need extra stuff. I'm healthy. I'm young. I'm out there doing stuff, right? And to realize that when you are very physical, that you're stressing your body in a good way, but it's stress nevertheless. And we really you want for longevity to be supporting it in all of these ways as you are stressing the body, so that the work that you're doing, it's like you're putting away money in the bank. But if you don't support your body while you're stressing it with all this really good but intense physical activity, it's as if there's like, a hole and some robbers are on the other side of your savings account and it's trickling out. You're not getting that great, build up in savings account that you're looking for as you're trying to build your health. So I just wanted, because I think some people are like, why do you want to take so many supplements and do all that stuff? You're so healthy. So I don't know if you have any comments, or at the end, we can kind of bring that in. And before we bring Miss Hayley Jones on, there was a question in the comments asking about the trifecta, because in Will's protocol that we'll have in the notes, the show notes, and on the newsletter, it's saying the protocol is a topical version where it is the trifecta, the frankincense, copaiba, and Siberian fir, plus the lemongrass, and then layered with either the deep blue stick or rub. That's topical. So that's to put on your feet and any muscles that are sore and you want to be supporting in that topical fashion. But we'll also brought in the idea of drinking just the trifecta, frankincense, copaiba, and Siberian fir is a wonderful drink and a delicious beverage. I usually do it as tea. I'll do it as a warmer hot beverage. But Will, are you drinking it cold right now?
Yes, or room temperature anyways.
Yeah, so if you haven't tried that, everyone, so it can be used topically, aromatically, and internally, those 3 oils, and should be.
Dr. Josie?
Yes.
Before we move on to Hayley, there's one more question that I thought was a great one from JK. And the question is, what about mental burnout from sports? So, Will, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the sort of the name of the game when you're looking at endurance or adventuring, is how to support the times when you're out there, so that in these sort of, again, active recovery places, you're restoring your mental, physical, and spiritual even well-being, because the times where you are out there, you're pushing all your energy outward. Your yang qi in terms of Chinese medicine is sort of exposed to the surface ultimately. And so the spirit of the body, you can even start hallucinating at that point, and that's that mental movement of the qi outward. But how to ultimately look at mental recovery and sustaining your mental muscle, if you will, is how to what you're doing in those times of active recovery or recovery. So, to do something else besides what you've focused on, if you're a runner, to do a swim, a light swim, or to do a bicycle ride, when it gets you into a different movement pattern, especially with swimming, with breaststroke or front crawl or back crawl. But those types of active recovery movements really help with, for me, the mental burnout. So that way, when you get back to what it is that you're trying to focus on, then you're, full speed ahead.
Awesome. Another tip that was from a presentation we did a couple years ago, and it was also from an endurance athlete, was he dosed Mito 2 max every few hours, like if he was doing a marathon or kind of an all-day event. And I believe Haylie's going to talk a little bit more about Mito 2 max, but I'm just curious if you've dosed Mito 2 max throughout a run or all-day event.
Yeah, definitely. During my last 50 miler, I had a vest with little pill bags, and every aid station, which was roughly every 5 to 6 miles, I'd pull that pill bag out, and in there I'd have several things. One would be a Mito 2 max. One would be a deep blue polyphenol complex. The third component would be a fish oil. So several things. One with Mito 2 max is, we'll hear more about Haylie, but of course, Mito 2 max, you want to be I always am cautious with anything with ginseng, because ginseng in many ways in Chinese medicine is used specifically for those who are at those kind of critical deficiency patterns. One, because it's very hot in nature, so it can create more internal heat and more internal yang qi, we call. So I'm always cautious, and I'm always very respectful for anything that has ginseng in the sort of recipe. But ultimately, with mental burnout, also it is what are you doing during the times of those races where you are running the most amount of miles in that session. So how to recover better or faster is ultimately what are you doing in the actual race, in the actual time of doing your activity. And that can and I learned that really the hard way, where I wasn't really doing anything during the race in terms of nutrition, hydration, too much stuff, and then I just paid the price at the end. Whereas if you keep things during your activity in mind to hydrate every 30 minutes with electrolytes, with the 3 kind of capsules that I had every, again, 6 to 7 miles, then it kept things more even keeled, and there was no proverbial price to pay at the end. I actually recovered in like one day. I was like super.
Wow.
I was surprised.
That's so for the regular folks out there. We can also take away from that, for like some of us, a 5-mile run would be a huge deal, and that would be hard. And you can be using things like Mito 2 max and the deep blue polyphenol blend, the turmeric for recovery as you're working to get into shape. In that same way, using it a little more than you would in just a normal daily dose.
Correct.
Let's move on though to Haylie.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Okay, so Will, I'm curious, it just like popped into my mind. With regards to extreme sports or this level of activity, how do you feel it relates to like burning out that kidney, innate jing qi, like, the kidney qi, that kind of the essence, basically,
Yeah.
this innate qi I'm letting people know, because I know that's part of something that can make that more deficient.
Definitely. And that's ultimately, again, what do you do during recovery? What do you do during your actual long event? What it is that leads you up to the sort of start line is, part of the puzzle, because the sort of golden question is, how do, as human beings, or if you're interested in this type of activity of doing these 50 milers, 100 milers, and to have that sustainable for decades is sort of the golden question. And to me, that's ultimately through, because again, from that Chinese medicine tool that we have, if your energy is being pushed all the way out, then what you can do during those recovery times to restore by astringing that qi, astringing the jing, ultimately to create more of that sort of proverbial battery to be retapped. That's, I think, for human beings, that is innate. We have this capacity to run hundreds of miles. It's our nature to run that much. But it takes training. It's about adapting your sort of body. It's doing the necessary things to support your body during these times of training, but then even more important, during the times of those races where you are doing the most number of miles that you've done in one 24-hour period or so.
Yeah, it's so great to be able to combat that what's depleting, what can be very depleting if you're not doing all these things.
And definitely, I do see runners out there who don't do the necessary things. They just eat burgers, pizza every day, and that's your body can do that, I guess. But if I were to do that, I would tank pretty hard.
I don't think one's body can do that over time.
Right.
Time will tell.
But the so-called what do you call the premier, or in terms of male ultra runner, Kilian Jornet, Spanish fella, he doesn't take many supplements at all, but he also trains in like Norway, where he has a little house and has a garden that's all biodynamically farmed. He drinks water off the glacier, I'm just like,
probably great fish too.
Yeah.
Amazing, local foods. So yeah, it's really, at least in the ultra running community, there's many different takes on how to run 100. There's, so many different ways to look at it and how to run that. But for me, from my experience, is that I've done it both ways. One is without any kind of thought on necessarily food and nutrition and necessarily supplementation per se. And then more recently with utilizing more consistently the things that I talked about. And there's a significantly faster turnaround. I can see why you can do like a 50 miler every couple of weeks. And that people do that. I've been able to do a 50 miler, a 32 miler, and I'm doing this Pikes Peak Marathon, which is you go up 8,000 feet in 13 miles and then all the way back down, and you're up at 14,000 feet.
Wow.
So that in a way is what I'm culminating this year to kind of develop, but it requires that kind of support.
Yes.
Those types of nutrients, those types of essential oils, I feel, to be sort of able to go back after it's all done and not be completely obliterated.
Well, let's bring bring Hayley Jones into the conversations. Hayley, please come on and
Here I am.
let's talk about being obliterated and not being obliterated.
Well, my entire chat was focused around how my primary recommendation for recovery is burgers, fries, and pizza. So now I don't know what to talk about. But I'm excited to be here. Will, that was super fascinating information. I love that. And I'm so in on the science part of all of it. So I was geeking out with you. So that was awesome. Thank you for all of that information. That was really valuable. So my kind of realm and wheelhouse is a little bit different on the spectrum. I don't primarily work with athletes who are endurance athletes, but that is like a huge feat. I can't even imagine how much you have to train to run up 8,000 feet and back down out of 14,000, like just the lack of oxygen alone. Kudos to you, man. But the people that I focus on, typically my target audience and the people that are most of my day-to-day are moms, coworkers, my friends, and then all the way to the extreme CrossFit athlete. So we're doing Olympic weightlifting, we're doing a lot of power output, we're doing a lot of large muscle groups, high intensity interval workouts. And so I focus a lot on recovery, as Will said, as like one of the primary ways that you just live your daily wellness routine. It is as important as the training that you do itself. So if you're an average person that isn't throwing barbells around and lifting dumbbells, I'm talking about vacuuming and bending over. Does anybody like vacuum or clean the house one day and you're like, somebody, I could just lay down and die. I'm so tired. That's like real for a lot of people. And a lot of times that's because you're not properly recovered and you're not fueling your body to do your daily tasks every day. So I've spent probably the better part of the last 18 months studying heart rate variability. And heart rate variability, in short, is a measure of your autonomic nervous system. And it is very widely considered one of the best objective metrics for physical fitness, determining your body's readiness to perform and to take on strain. So that could be physical strain, that could be emotional strain, cardiovascular strain, all of those things. And so heart rate variability, essentially, if you're not familiar with this term, is literally the variance of time in between the beats of your heart. So if you have a heart rate, let's say of like 60 beats per minute, it's not actually beating once every second. Within that minute, there might be a beat at 0.9 seconds, or there might be a 1.15 seconds. So there's essentially the greater the variability between your beats of heart is, your body is able to perform at a higher level. And so when I'm using these types of metrics with athletes, I can create some correlative data between how ready their body is to perform and what activities or workouts they should be doing that day. So although heart rate variability manifests as a function of your heart rate, it actually originates from the nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system, which you guys probably know, controls the involuntary aspects of your physiology, right? So there's two branches. There's the parasympathetic nervous system, and then there's the sympathetic. One is like the deactivating system, your parasympathetic, and one is the activating system, right? That's your sympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is often referred to as like the rest and digest. So it handles input from your organs, your digestion, your fingernails growing, all of those things. And it causes a decrease in your heart rate. So the sympathetic nervous system, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, is often called your fight or flight. Okay, so we have these two competing parts of your nervous system. That reflects responses to things like stress and exercise, which is what we're talking about here. And it increases your heart rate and your blood pressure. So heart rate variability comes from these two competing branches of your autonomic nervous system simultaneously sending signals to your heart. So if your nervous system is balanced, your heart rate is constantly being told to slow down, to speed up, to slow down, to speed up, depending on what stimulus it's getting. So this causes a fluctuation in your heart rate variability. So the higher that number is your body is more ready to take on strain. So a lot of times we have a huge imbalance. So this is why it's a sign of physical fitness. When you have high heart rate variability, it means your body's response to both sets of those inputs is balanced. It's getting a little bit from here, a little bit from there. It's It's a sign that your nervous system is essentially balanced. And it's capable of adapting to its environment. So you can perform at your best when you're most able to adapt to your environment. But on the other hand, if you have low heart rate variability, one branch is often dominating more than the other. So one's sending stronger signals to it and your body's listening to that one. So that's a good thing if you're an ultra runner and you're ready for a race and your sympathetic nervous system is like, I have to run my face off for the next like 12 days and I can't stop. Like you need that system to be listened to, but it also turns off your essential functions. Like your hair is not growing while you're running your race and your fingernails are not growing. And lots of other like non-essential functions aren't happening. So we want to create like a balanced system so that we have the ability to perform. So heart rate variability varies from person to person, from age to age. There's no like baseline. I couldn't compare mine to Erin's or to Will's or to anyone else's. I have a baseline heart rate variability and different factors in my life influence it. So my reason for bringing up heart rate variability is mine fluctuates day to day, and I have created correlative research using a heart rate variability tracker. What influences my heart rate variability and what allows my body to perform the best the next day. And I've done it for almost 50 other people who also use the same metric. So when I'm talking about focusing on recovery, there are huge factors that influence your body's ability to do stuff the next day, essentially. So like vacuuming your house, packing your car for a trip, lifting a freaking Yeti cooler that's like fully loaded. If you've never done that, it's like lifting like 60 pounds off the ground. It's so much easier when your body is able to do it. And I'm not just talking physical strength and you work out every day and you're just a strong person. Some days the cooler feels like it weighs 900 pounds to me. And some days I'm like, oh, whatever, it's like weighs nothing. And that's my body is either recovered or it's not. So some huge factors that play a role in recovery and how ready your body is to either take on mental, physical strain. Do you ever have days where you're like more irritated than others? And some days you have patients like of Jode. Like those are days that you have super high recovery and your body has adapted to its environment and you're ready to handle it. And some days you've got zero capacity. And what's really cool about knowing what it is you can support those people. My husband and I both track our heart rate variability scores. And when I'm like, geez, he's like the grumpiest dude ever today, I can check what his recovery score and I'm like, that makes sense. His heart rate variability is like in the toilet. So he is not ready to take on anything. And I probably need to pick up the slack. So it's really fun to learn like the science behind it for me. So some things that play a role in your body's ability to recover the next day are things like Will talked about hydration. Hydration is humongous. I have almost a 19% difference in my recovery scores if I'm properly hydrated or I'm not. It's like that big for me. It's one of the biggest metrics for me is hydration. And that's not even just drinking a ton of water, right? It's your body's ability to absorb the water that you're drinking. So like Will recommended, hydration supplements and electrolytes are huge. I use a brand called Relight. I don't know if you, what brands you endorse or talk about, Will, but Relight is one of my favorites because it doesn't have a bunch of junk in it. It's like very clean ingredients. They use really amazingly sourced salt that they put in it also. So that one's just a really good one. And a lot of people make the mistake of just drinking hydration supplements and then expecting to be hydrated. But those hydration things and those sources of electrolytes allow your body and your cells to absorb the water that you're drinking. So you also have to drink water, turns out. So make sure you're drinking lots of water with your hydration supplements. I recommend at a minimum your body weight in ounces, but a lot of times a lot more than that. Other things are diet, right? What we eat, stress, if I take on a lot of strain or I work out really hard at the gym, my body's ability to recover the next day is diminished because I just took on a lot of strain. Things like skin temperature, respiratory rate, like sleeping at elevation. You guys have probably seen my Instagram. I am like on top of a mountain every other day backpacking. So I'm always sleeping in elevation, in and out of it. So different things that I have to do to regulate my respiratory rate. It's always elevated when I'm in elevation, which impacts my ability to recover the next day. So I use things like Breathe Right strips. I put Breathe on my chest. I do different respiratory supplementation so that I can kind of keep my respiratory rate a little bit lower. And one of my hugest correlative ones is skin temperature. So regulating the temperature that you sleep. That has greatly impacted my recovery score. So the recommendation is between 55 and 65 degrees for sleeping. And if your body can't thermoregulate, your body's resources are basically spoken for. It is like spending all of your time when you should be sleeping and recovering and making your muscles come back together for the next day. It's spending all of its time and energy just trying to regulate your body temperature. And so we want to allow our body to have resources allocated to all of its different departments doing what they need to do. My other huge tip, which might be a weird one, don't eat a lot of food high in fat up to 3 hours before bed. And the reason for that is fat is it's very intense for your body to break it down. It's just one of the highest processes for breakdown. So when we sleep, this is like, there's all these different articles and research correlated to this, but your body's digestive system is now spending all of its time while you're sleeping trying to digest your highly fat content food. So if you can eat the fat that you're going to eat in the daytime or at breakfast time and just kind of minimize those things at night, you will sleep and recover a lot better. So if you're sleeping and you ate a big, huge, gigantic beef brisket covered in cheese and mashed potatoes, you're probably going to let your body, all of its resources are now spoken for the stomach. And so what you need to recover for your sleep quality, for your REM, for your deep sleep, for your muscles, all of that is like, I don't have time for that. I need to handle the brisket. So now all it's doing is spending its time doing that. So high fat content foods, I would minimize that at night. And then take Terrazyme with your dinner. Is like my number one thing. And that's because it helps break down the food that you ate. So now you're allowing your body to have more resources for other things, resources for other parts and other things. So I take 2 Terrazymes with my dinner. It doesn't matter if it's high in fat or not, always 2 Terrazymes just to break down whatever I've eaten. Drinking at least your body weight in water was the other one that I had mentioned earlier. And then I would also recommend lime in your water. When you're drinking water, I add that with my hydration supplement. Lime is huge for the respiratory system. And I'm always doing elevated heart rate, cardiovascular strain. So doing that is a very important part for me. I take that backpacking with me. It's always in my water all the time. And then I also take a magnesium and melatonin supplement at night. And I think a lot of people do that, but that has had an 11% recovery increase for me, taking a magnesium and melatonin supplement. The one that I take is called Beam. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but they have it in a capsule and they have it in the form of a tea, but it's magnesium, melatonin, and a CBD. A lot of people take Calm also if you're affected by like cocoa, because it's kind of like a hot cocoa kind of a flavor, but that has been huge for me. So that is helping like my body get into deep sleep faster. It's just helping my body signal that melatonin needs to be produced. So I love that one. And then Aisha, can you throw up that the meme for the capsules? I take 2 of each of these an hour before bed. It's 2 of each. You're gonna do pettigrain, Siberian fir, marjoram, copaiba, and lemongrass. This I've done back and forth. This is a 9% increase in my recovery scores, which is so awesome because what I'm trying to paint a picture for you is you can do simple things to get your body ready to handle the next day's events. So you don't have to be training all day long or have the perfect diet or eat all the right organic fruits and vegetables. Those are all good things. But some people just don't have time for that. You do have time to put 2 drops of each of these in a capsule. And that can increase your body's ability to handle the stuff that you need to handle the next day. So these are like really simple things that I know y'all have 5 minutes to do. The other thing that I do is I take 1 DDR Prime soft gel 30 minutes before I go to bed. And that has been a 7% increase in my recovery score. So you can, I have like spreadsheets of this stuff, like what I did, what I took, with it, without it, with it, without it, had other people do it with it, without it, just to get the data for it. And it's so fun for me. So those have been huge in just helping my body take on mental exhaustion the next day, strain, cardiovascular and physical strain, have more power output when I'm lifting weights. My muscles don't fatigue as fast when I've taken this the day before. But for the average Joe or the average mom carrying groceries around, you can carry your groceries like probably 19 parking spaces further. So you can park a little farther away from when you check out at the grocery store. Like all of it is helpful. You can lift your kids more, you can carry them a little bit longer. You just don't burn out as fast. So all of these things are really helpful in fueling your body for the next day. And then my only other recommendation that I have is have a diffuser going at night. That is like a super simple thing. I always get it ready in the morning and just set it on my nightstand so that I can turn it on, because as much as I love to think I'll just do it right before I go to bed, I don't. I go in there and I'm like ready for bed because I drank my melatonin and magnesium, and I just like can't be bothered to fill a diffuser. So I always have it ready when I'm going to bed on my nightstand. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys who do high output, high intensity workouts, lifting weights, or you're just a mom carrying groceries 19 parking spaces further.
And Haylie, I just wanted to mention for the podcast people, right, that your meme, besides that, your incredible formula and your DDR at night also includes saying that you take the full dose of the LLV, Mitomax, Deep Blue Polyphenol.
I don't know why I thought that was
twice
on
a
there,
day.
but it wasn't.
Yeah, and Terrazyme with meals. So
yes.
that's still on there.
So I will add that in now. Yes, I take a full dose of LLV. I take it with breakfast and with lunch. That is like a number one. I don't know why I didn't say that. I think I thought it. I just made an assumption that we all like ESP'd LLV. And then I do Mito 2 Max and Deep Blue Polyphenol morning and afternoon. And I actually do recommend taking Mito 2 Max 3 to 5 times a day if you are competing. And my reasoning behind that, when I have athletes do it, is because most of the ones that I'm working with in the CrossFit world are already taking some crap pre-workout full of junk, stimulus, caffeine drink, something crazy. So I would rather have them reallocate what they're taking already to a Mito 2 Max so that their body can just metabolize it better than to continue the fake stuff that they're already taking. So I do recommend that to the people that I'm working with.
I know we're almost out of time. We have some questions, however. What should we do? I know the question was, how did you design your blend?
Good question. I tried a million different combinations of essential oils that I already knew supported the musculoskeletal system or the muscular system or the respiratory system. And I would mix them in and out and see which one hit the mark for the highest recovery score the next day. And so that took about 8 months of different combinations to try. And then I had other people try it to see what their recovery scores were.
That's so researched. That's amazing. And I love that, if someone doesn't have all those oils and they're feeling like, whatever, I'm not going to use the word lazy, but sometimes it comes. The DDR was 7% recovery and it's already formulated. It's already in a gel cap. So.
I know, I wanted to reach out to doTERRA. Can you just put this blend in a capsule, please?
Yeah.
But instead, Will and I are going to run around with our vests on looking like drug dealers with our pill pouches.
You should definitely send doTERRA the recipe and your data. They probably love it. Thank you all so much. Is it okay, Dr. Josie, if I take it over and close us out? Thank you, Will and Haylie, for all your great information. For anyone listening, we're going to put their links and bios in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Will or Haylie further, you can just check out the show notes for that. And if you're listening to the podcast and you want copies of their protocols, you just go to hellovisionary.life and sign up for our Visionary newsletter. We send it out every Wednesday afternoon, and we give you the protocols, actually all the protocols from all of our past podcasts. So we hope you go check it out. A quick announcement before I close up the call. We are going to go on break for the month of September because many of us are traveling to Salt Lake City for the annual doTERRA convention. We are going to be learning about the science of essential oils, and we are most excited to be learning about the new MetaPower supplement system, which I imagine will be helpful for Will and Haylie in their recovery studies. So you can catch up on past podcast episodes, or you could go to our website, hellovisionary.life, and look at our 10+ year archive of webinars and calls if you miss us while we are gone. Otherwise, we will be back October 3rd, but with a new time. We're still going to meet on Mondays. However, the live recording of the podcast will happen at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And of course, we'll get it up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. So no matter what schedule you adhere to, you can always come and listen to the replay. If you don't have doTERRA essential oils and these supplements that we've talked about, definitely talk to the person who invited you to listen to this podcast, because you will want to get your own wholesale membership from doTERRA. We recommend that you start with the Daily Habits Kit. That's going to give you the Lifelong Vitality Pack that both Haylie and Will spoke of, the Terrazyme, the probiotics, a few essential oils that you can start to play with. You can do the trifecta through that kit, and the Deep Blue Rub, which is incredible for all athletes and busy moms. Anyone that has a body can probably benefit from the Deep Blue Rub. And that'll give you your wholesale membership. You'll be able to set up your loyalty rewards. Oh, thank you, Josie. It's the Healthy Habits Kit, and we call it the Daily Habits Protocol. That's the confusion there. So when you talk to your friend, just say, I want to get that Healthy Habits Kit, the one with the Lifelong Vitality Pack. And we're going to miss you. So we will see you back October 3rd at 10 a.m. Put it in your calendar. We're going to have more great content and more wonderful speakers to share with you. So have a great September, everybody. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.